we are mildly interesting guys, and we talk about some stuff. So welcome to the podcast, we call it Joel the Podcast. It's Alex and it's Alex, here for Joel the Podcast. Lovely. Hello, everybody. I'm Alex.
And I'm Alex.
And this is our podcast, Joel.
Joel.
Well,
Wait. Ugh.
What?
I completely screwed up speaking. Whatever.
Okay. So if Nathan didn't edit this, you probably heard the endings of the theme song at the beginning there. We decided to finally listen to it before we started talking. Actually doing that made me think about some comments I have, but I think we might want to save that for our 1 year.
All right. That sounds good.
So tune in 2 episodes from now to hear my comments on that.
Yep.
So yes, welcome everybody to episode, is this 29?
I have no idea. Probably.
I think it's
maybe
29. Well,
Let's see. 27 was when we received an email. 28 was after that.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
So it's 29. Yep. Good job.
All right. Thank you. So welcome to episode 29 of our podcast. We've almost made it 1 year. So first I just wanted to let everyone know that Nathan does not owe me $1. Second of all, okay, I actually wanted to discuss this with you on the podcast. So we were mentioning before how, I don't know if we mentioned it on the air or not, but how the sports update is not that interesting if you're listening to it in the future of the actual, when we were talking about it. Right. And I have an idea to make it more interesting.
Okay.
For every team or sport or whatever that we talk about, we should make predictions.
Oh,
so that if you're listening to it in the future, you can be like, wow, they're idiots, or wow, they're geniuses.
Okay,
and
that's a good idea.
It's actually a little bit interesting. So
all right.
I also thought of that because I wanted to ask you about your prediction this year, because our first sports update is that earlier today, Purdue absolutely demolished Michigan State in basketball.
Unexpectedly. I have no idea how good Purdue basketball is.
Michigan State is ranked number 8 this year, or at the moment. So
I think they're genuinely good. I think something went horribly wrong today.
Yep. So since I guess we haven't had a podcast in a couple of weeks here, the update about Purdue is they demolished Michigan State today.
That's all we need to go into as far as I'm concerned.
No, they took Michigan to 2 OT on the road earlier this week.
Okay, I suppose that
was also good. And then they scored 37 points against Illinois.
Unfortunately, Illinois also scored more than 37, so that was just a disgusting performance.
So Purdue has been an extremely bipolar team this year, and actually it's not just Purdue. I was looking at the entire Big Ten. Ohio State's lost 4 in a row, and they lost to IU the other day. Anyway, here's the thing. So first of all, my question is this. Prediction. Will Purdue make the Sweet 16 this year?
No, I don't think so.
My prediction. Go ahead.
My reasoning is that they, as far as I can tell so far, and I haven't paid super close attention, but I think they have played their best basketball at Mackey, and everything else has been just a coin flip.
Yep.
And I don't think they're going to be, with how tough the rest of the Big Ten is, I don't think they're going to be seeded very high. So I don't think they're going to get a super easy team to start out with, and then that means the next team they face will probably be tough, which means my guess is that they lose in the first weekend of the tournament. I still do think they'll make it, but they'll lose either in the round of 64 or 32.
All right, so there's Nathan's prediction. I'm going to go the other way and say they will make the Sweet 16.
Okay.
You're absolutely right that they've played much better at home this year, but I think that they have the talent and they have the coaching to be good even on the road. And I think Matt Painter's a good enough coach and they have enough players. I mean, Travion Williams has been really good this year.
Yeah.
Like, really, all they need on offense, in my opinion, is for either Aaron Wheeler or Nojel Eastern to figure it out. I mean, both have, especially Wheeler, has potential to be very good on offense and just hasn't been. So I think by come March, my prediction, Purdue will be a good team and they will make it to the Sweet 16 with a shot at making it to the Elite Eight. I don't know if they'll win in the Sweet 16, but it won't just be like they have no chance.
It's funny because I agreed with all of your reasoning, but I still don't think they're gonna do it.
Yeah, I mean the thing is they could just not figure it out. So
yeah,
so that's why it's a good prediction thing, because we're both on opposite ends and one of us will look like an idiot. Speaking of
maybe we should bet $1 on this.
Yeah, so that was the other thing I was thinking is this idea of making predictions will lend us a lot of ways to bet $1. So yeah, if you want to bet $1 that Purdue will not make the Sweet 16, I will take that bet.
All right, let's make this explicitly clear. I am betting $1 that Purdue basketball this season will not make the Sweet 16.
Right, and I'm betting $1 that they will, so let's shake on it here.
All right.
And it's now official, recorded in podcast history, just like the other bet, I might add.
I don't think so, but okay.
Well, tune in 2 weeks to find out for sure.
I really should have taken from the episode that I listened to where we argued more about it. I should have taken clips of my reasoning because I feel like we're going to get a very one-sided view of the event itself and none of the reasoning afterwards to make it seem like I'm more correct.
It can't be one-sided if the entire clip is you saying, I will bet you $1 that Kostov will win, and I'm saying I bet $1 on Albert winning, and then us agreeing on that. I don't really think it's very ambiguous.
See, I don't think that's what happened at first, though, and
it's not what happened at first, but it's what happened at second.
All
right, so yeah, tune in to hear like 30 minutes of that argument in 2 weeks.
Yeah. All
right. Yeah, so other sports news is the Eagles lost their playoff. Carson Wentz got injured in the first quarter of their playoff game, and as a result, the Eagles were unable to win. They came close to tying it at some points, but were unable to score. So, Eagles season over. What?
They were playing the Seahawks?
Yes.
And I think the Seahawks lost in their next round as well, right?
The Seahawks have not played there. They play tonight at 6:30.
Oh, okay.
So
that is my prediction. The Seahawks will lose their next round.
Well, we need a little bit more prediction. So here's what's happened so far in the playoffs. So the Ravens have lost to the Titans this weekend. I'm talking about. Yep. The 49ers have beaten the Vikings, and let's see what the score is right now.
Thinking of
what? Oh, you're thinking of the Vikings?
Yes.
So right now the Texans are beating the Chiefs 24-21. So with all that information in mind, who's going to win the Super Bowl?
Definitely the Titans.
Bold choice.
Yeah, but if you want my real answer, I need to go look at the teams that are left again. Honestly, I think either the 49ers or the Chiefs have a good shot.
Yeah, so if you had asked me this question 2 days ago, I would have said the Ravens.
Right.
But the Titans absolutely shut them down, which was very surprising to me.
They've been Yeah, I might slightly more unironically pick the Titans. They've been playing really, really well recently. I'm trying to find where do I find like what the upcoming games are?
I don't know. You can go to ESPN.com probably. So, I mean, there's only 2 games next weekend. So,
Right. And it's the um 49ers playing, what did you
Seahawks
say?
are either the Seahawks or Packers,
Yeah,
and it'll be the Titans playing either the Texans or Chiefs.
right.
So, so your prediction is, what did you say? I forgot what you said. You got to pick one. Who's your prediction?
For real, uh I think uh I might as well just stick with the Titans because I feel like I'm going to be wrong no matter what else I say, and this is the outcome that would make me look smartest if I was right.
Right. My opinion is the 49ers are, in my opinion, the most likely team to be in the Super Bowl from the NFC. And from
Right.
the AFC, I honestly could see any of the 3 teams that are still in it being there. And I think probably the 49ers just have a slight edge from, I don't know, I think they're just a better team, solid defense. So I'm going to go 49ers as my prediction.
All right. So
All right.
49ers versus Tennessee. We'll have to tune in and
Yeah. So if you're listening to this in the future, email us with how wrong we are
yeah,
and how stupid we are for making these dumb predictions.
exactly.
If you liked us making predictions, email us to tell us that, or if you didn't like it, email us to tell us that. Because the other option, other than making predictions, is to just give a very fast, short sports update. So if you would prefer that, email us, alexandalex@joelthepodcast@gmail.com, and let us know. All right, so this is something I think we mentioned. Okay, so first, last episode at the end, we mentioned that coming up in 2 weeks is our 1 year anniversary of our podcast beginning. And we have decided to actually put an effort in going through and picking out clips to kind of just go through and talk about for that episode. So I know I'm asking a lot here, but if you could post last episode this week,
Oh boy.
so that at least there's a small chance that someone might listen to it before episode 20, before January 26th. And
Is Ben caught up on the episodes?
I have no idea.
Because I'm wondering, like, well, it doesn't matter whether or not as to whether or not I will actually do this. My hope is that when it comes out, at least Ben, who I know is, well, only Ben will be like having the potential to see it. So I'm
Right.
curious what the odds are that he does see it.
Yeah, so I think the barrage of episodes that you posted around Christmas has kind of backlogged him. So
Gotcha.
I suspect that he's not caught up, but you know what? There's a small chance, so may as well. So yeah, chances are if you're listening to this, we've already recorded the episode, but if it's before January 26, 2020, send us your favorite clips from the year. Actually, you know what? Even if it's not before that, send us thoughts on what your favorite moments and episodes are from the last year, and well, yeah, we can talk about that on the podcast. So, but especially, yes, we were talking about it before this episode. It's going to be really good. So tune in, episode 31.
It'll be pretty much as good as it gets as for this
Yes.
podcast.
Listen, I'm going so far as to say I think it will be good.
Yeah.
And you know how my opinion is with this podcast is not very high, so
Yes.
I hope we don't screw it up. All right. Cool. So here we are, and we are in week 4 of this movie, which we have yet to title, by the way.
Oh, right. I forgot that we're still missing a title.
So I think today we're finishing up this movie pretty much regardless. What?
One way or another.
Yeah, one way or another, this movie is ending today. So for Nathan and for everyone else who hasn't listened to the other episodes recently, let me just give a quick summary of where we are.
Yep.
So our premise is a guy stumbles on a shiny metal sphere in the forest, and there's an old man with the sphere. And you find out that the sphere is a time machine, and the old guy is himself from the future. So the actual what happens in the movie, in the beginning, you see him hiking through as we have some opening credits. He comes upon the clearing to see the old guy in the shiny thing. He can't really tell what it is, and the old guy won't tell him anything. So he just kind of leaves. At this point, you see our first flashback, which flashes back to him and his wife at his son's t-ball game or baseball game. I don't know. It depends on how young the son is, but so at the baseball game, they go to ice cream afterwards, and the son like autographs one of the baseballs for him, and then the wife and kid leave separately from him because he's catching up with a friend or something. Flash forward, he comes back at night. The time machine has been kind of opened up somewhat, so he can see it's just the guy clearly does know what it is. So he goes and he calls out the guy and talks to him about it and finds out it's a time machine. We didn't really talk about this, but I think it makes sense to have some more footage in there of him talking to old Joel about it, because at this point old Joel doesn't know that he's young Joel, like that they're the same person either. So at this point, so what we had decided was, you look confused. So what we had decided was the first couple times, since he loses his memory when he goes back in time. So the first couple times he doesn't do anything to remember that it's him. So this is one of those times he doesn't know that it's his past self. So I think we throw some stuff in there of them talking and kind of relating a little bit. Flashback number 2, you find out that... Wait, I feel like I missed a flashback. Oh yeah, nope, this is right. Flashback number 2, you find out that his family's dead. Actually, this is much better. I don't know if we did it this way originally. You find out his family died in a car accident, and he's super broken up about it. So obviously that flashback will be longer than my description of it, but that's what it is. Flashback to the present, he basically figures out that he can send Joel back to the future and get rid of him in order to be able to use the time machine. So he does that, and then realizes he doesn't know how to use the time machine. We have here the scene with him realizing he can't leave, so he tries to run out of the clearing and comes back in to the same clearing. Also wanted to get rid of a dumb thing we had added before, which is we said before that if he tries to leave and comes back in to other people, it just looks like he's running in a circle around it. We eliminated the need for that when we said that old Joel can talk now, and he basically has proof that he's his future self. So there's really no reason for that. So anyway, so you see him trying to figure out the time machine over a couple months. Finally, as we approach the reveal, we're interspersing flashbacks to him getting better after the crash. So he starts going to therapy and starts taking up hiking as a hobby. And then interspersed in between each other, we see the first time of him coming on the time machine with no one there, as well as him finding the autographed baseball that you can see it's a different one, him realizing that the old guy was his future self. So from here, our plan is to basically show a bunch of attempts of him trying to get his past self to go away. And in the beginning, he's trying more trick methods, tries to convince his past self that he's his future self, but that doesn't work. Not because his past self doesn't believe him, but because he's just too emotionally caught up to like just listen to reason. So he tries a number of different things. Over time, eventually he just kind of gives up and becomes depressed and stops even trying to get his past self to go away. And in those times, he starts more emotionally connecting with his past self, at which point he realizes that instead of trying to trick his past self into leaving, he needs to get his past self to move on emotionally so he won't try to use the time machine. And then as that goes on, he destroys his log of things that have happened and stops reminding himself that it's his past self. And then so each time he does realize it afterwards, after he takes over the time machine, but he stops reminding himself so that he can have a more genuine conversation. And then eventually in the end, he convinces his past self to move on with his life. And he, I guess, dies at the end. We didn't really discuss the very end yet, but that's kind of the overall arc of the second half. What we were stuck on at the end of the last episode is we need some reason. We need something for him to be doing for 40 years. That he can't just go back in time immediately. So, like you suggested, maybe the battery has to like charge up, but the problem is then he's just sitting there for 40 years, which is not that interesting. I suggested maybe the time machine breaks every time, but that's kind of dumb. I suggested that maybe he has to calculate how much time to go back, but that's also kind of dumb. Because then you have issues of him going back in time and seeing himself in the same. He has to take 40 years every time, basically, is the point of the time loop. So, yeah. So I don't have any ideas about that, and I assume you haven't thought about it either.
Not directly, no. Just some. We don't need to go with this at all, actually. But just to kind of toss some other things out there that could steer us away from where we've been getting stuck. Could it possibly be that the time machine is imperfect and it doesn't actually take him 40 years? It's just like kind of a physical toll to travel through time, so it kind of makes him look like he's really old and like his memories are kind of degraded by having gone back. Is there a reason other than changing his appearance that we need him to be like old at the end?
There's not. So really changing his appearance is the only reason we need it to take a long time. So maybe, what you're saying is maybe traveling back in time, it just ages you 40 years in appearance. Right. And also makes you lose some of your memories. That's not bad. I feel like we lose a little bit of movie. Because we would be because now, as soon as he figures out how to use it after a year or however long it takes, a couple months, he just goes back in time.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like it'd probably be easy enough to show. I was going to say it feels like it might be hard to show that just going back in time is what ages him. The audience might be confused if a young guy clicks go back in time and then an old guy shows up. But I think that you could show that. So
yeah, get some CGI effects of some sort of time travel-y looking thing going on, and he's strapped into the chair and
hair growing on his face. Yeah, so that's doable. This is a minor thing, but before we were talking about the ball being kind of scuffed up and old, the one that old Joel has, whereas he has a new ball, point. Which I like that contrast.
I did as well.
So we would need some explanation for why the ball is old and scuffed up then.
Yeah. that could be part of the Joel aging scene, is like his clothes kind of start to unravel, and like we do get a cutaway shot of the ball like starting to fray a little bit around the edges, and the writing gets worn.
So are we saying that going back in time causes everything to just age 40 years?
Maybe. I actually
think it's not unreasonable to show him just like constantly holding the baseball over the amount of time it takes him to actually figure out how to use the time machine.
Yeah.
Such that it's observably more worn by that time anyway.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay, but I mean, actually, either of those explanations are fine. It doesn't really matter.
Sure.
So
I'm trying to. I don't necessarily definitely feel this way. I'm trying to decide if that explanation kind of cheapens the time loop. You know, because he's not like stuck for a lifetime trying to solve this and then going back only to fail after a lifetime.
That's true. Because I feel like the desperation of old Joel is driven by just being stuck in the same clearing for 40 years.
Yeah.
I agree that kind of cheapens it a little bit.
So maybe we need kind of a...
I actually don't necessarily. I think last time I thought it was just kind of boring to see him sitting around for 40 years.
Yeah.
I actually do think you can make that not that boring. Like showing, because if we're having him, I don't know if you remember, but we said he's going to be kind of like recording logs, like in The Martian.
Yeah.
So if we have him recording logs and we show him trying different things to stay sane, I think, especially since this part isn't like the entire second half, it's just a part of the second half.
Yeah.
I think there's enough stuff that we could show there that we could have just some mechanic where he has to wait 40 years. The thing is, I feel like having a battery charge up for 40 years is kind of bad. I think we need some alternative explanation than that.
Yeah, I do agree. I think he should be trying to do something if he is just stuck there. And that could be, I mean, like you said, having it break every time maybe isn't necessarily the best option, because then he could just figure out how it broke and why eventually, and then write down for himself to stop
doing that. Right.
But if there's something that is kind of intrinsic to the use of the machine, so maybe he can get it to... Maybe he can get it. He can figure out how to get it to travel back in time like a few minutes or something, and we can make that kind of obvious by having like some kind of obvious event, like an animal wandering through the clearing or something like that, and he sets it up, and he thinks he's dialing in, 6 months ago, before his family died, and then he pops out of the time machine and it turns out it's just like 30 seconds earlier than it was or something like that.
Right.
And he can't figure out how to correctly instruct it what to do.
I think you're kind of correct. So the issue I have with that is then there's two Joels, right? The Joel from 30 seconds ago is also there.
Oh, yeah, that's a problem. Okay.
So, but I think I like the idea of maybe instead of a battery charging up, he has to collect like enough fuel. And it takes a lot of fuel to go back. Oh, see, the thing about collecting fuel is the longer amount of time you wait, the more fuel you have to collect. So the
Right.
question is,
So he has to be able to get more fuel per time than it takes to go back that amount of time.
right. So okay. So here's okay.
Maybe
We're
he
almost-
figures out that isn't like that he can't do that being confined in that space. So he has to engineer it to be more efficient.
Right. Sure. Okay. Here's what I think. He realizes he needs some kind of fuel, and he realizes that he can't just. I mean, let's say the fuel is like sticks or something. The machine can run off of sticks or rocks. Well, that just makes less sense, but sticks.
Shovel full of dirt, toss it in, and you can travel back in time.
So he realizes that he needs to figure out a more efficient way of delivering energy to it. So you can show him over many years, like trying to figure out more efficient ways of, like, delivering energy. And probably at some point, maybe like 10 years or 20 years, he's going to just like give up, right? Like, at that point, it's like 20 years. How am I ever going to get that amount of energy? And finally, some event, I don't know, we can discuss what it is, but after 40 years, some event happens that is like, a volcano erupts and he can use the lava, or like,
oh, I see what you're saying.
or like, and somebody digs up an oil well nearby and he finds oil, or some event that allows him to have enough energy to go back.
Right.
But
okay.
that event is specific to being 40 years later. So it always takes him 40 years to go back in time.
Okay. I like that. That's good. So you can
So what's the event?
Okay. My first thought was like a lightning strike, but that seems too easy to like deduce, just build a
Right. I agree.
Something.
I was thinking about that too.
So maybe, let's see, what else do we know about this place where he's at? It's like nearby a town, right?
I mean,
but it's in kind of like a foresty area.
Okay, what if there's some like large animal that, like shows up?
Why?
Like, why would it show up? I don't know. Why do animals go anywhere they go?
No. Like, what would the animal do for him?
Oh, well, he can use the animal's, like the biomass of the animal to fuel.
He's gonna burn the animal?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's not clear what the actual delivery method of energy to this thing is. Like, he's in a clearing, right? So whatever he initially tries has to be like he throws some sticks in there, and that's like nothing, right?
Yeah.
But if he's able to throw sticks in there, then clearly just basically anything that can burn will work, right? So
yeah.
Actually, okay, maybe it's not a large animal, but what we can do is we can have something that's not necessarily super large combine with some technique that he's figured out. So over the times we're showing him engineering more efficient ways, we can show like maybe he grinds up some dead animals and mixes it with something and then heats it up or something, and he's like, this is the most efficient fuel I can make. But it's not enough with the like rabbits and squirrels and stuff that actually go into the clearing most of the time. So
okay, so he's come up with some kind of like chemical reaction, basically, that once he's obtained a large enough amount of something, he knows he'll be able to work.
That doesn't make sense either, because then he could just like store up dead animals for 10 years and he would definitely have enough.
I think the key, though, is that like the amount of stuff per time is not high enough to be able to go back in time for that amount of time.
Yeah, so but
like the amount he needs is growing at a constant rate.
Right.
and the amount he's able to get is growing at a slower rate.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
Essentially, he needs to be able to, like, there's one event, 40 years, that bumps out the amount he needs past what he got in that amount of time.
Right. No, I get. Yeah. Okay. I agree. Yeah, that makes sense. The problem is if it's like just animal remains.
Yeah.
At like after 40 years, if the amount of animal remains he needs is growing more slowly than what he can collect, just one large animal like dying is not going to be enough.
Yeah. Okay. I think you're right. Maybe it is some sort of, like, you mentioned a volcano. Maybe there's like some sort of geothermal activity that he can harness. Like,
what if a meteor lands in his clearing? A smallish meteor that doesn't just kill him immediately.
he's sitting around for 40 years, like, if only I had enough energy, and then this meteor just obliterates. And then there's a voiceover. Ironically, that was exactly enough energy if he had been able to harness that somehow.
Ironically, his dead body was then transported back in time.
All right, if we're not able to come up with a satisfactory conclusion to this movie by the time our time is up today, that is how it will end.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
Okay, but so maybe there's a meteor is kind of, I think the meteors that can make it down without burning up in the atmosphere are just by definition pretty large.
Right, so that's probably not feasible.
I mean, I don't know exactly. So imagine a meteor that is whatever the maximum size a meteor can be that burns up completely before hitting the ground.
Okay.
Now imagine a meteor that's just a little bit bigger than that.
I see where you're going with this.
So by the time it reaches the ground, it can't have burned up completely because we just said that it's slightly bigger than a meteor that would have done that.
Right.
Does that mean it's very small when it hits the ground?
I don't know enough about meteors to comment, but it seems reasonable that could be the case.
It must be so because the limit is it doesn't hit the ground. So right. There should be some sufficiently small amount of meteor that you can add to make it such that a very small meteor can hit the ground.
Right. Okay, let me propose one more thing before we go with that.
All right.
Over the course of him being there, humans develop more sophisticated nuclear technology.
Mm-hmm.
Enough that we start using it on like planes. So we have like a small nuclear reactor on a plane instead of gas.
Okay.
And a plane explodes overhead of his clearing.
Yeah.
But obviously the nuclear reactor is engineered such that if the plane explodes, it doesn't just cause a nuclear explosion. So the nuclear reactor falls into his clearing and he figures out how to use it to power the time machine.
Okay.
Do you think that's more or less far-fetched than a meteor slightly larger than one that would burn up in the atmosphere lands in his clearing?
I do think it's more likely that humans over 40 years develop some sort of more efficient energy source and somehow it makes its way to his clearing. We also have to assume that area doesn't get developed into like housing or farms or whatever.
That's a reasonable assumption though.
That's fair enough, I think. We can say for the purposes it's just obvious that that's the case.
Right.
Now as far as the plane idea, here's another suggestion that we totally don't have to go with, but what if he like deliberately shoots the plane down somehow?
Okay. All right. I mean,
seen them going by and he's like, that's exactly what I need.
If he is able to build technology enough to shoot a plane down, don't you think he would have enough technology to power his time machine, though? Okay, no. If this were a funny movie, what he should do is just build like a really strong laser pointer and point it at the plane, and it blinds the pilot. I guess that wouldn't really cause the plane to explode or crash in his clearing, but
the pilot's like, my eyes, and the plane blows up for no reason.
We should have one episode of just it's only us thinking of the most absurd ways that he can obtain the energy.
The next movie we do should definitely be some kind of absurd premise like that, rather than one we have to think about like this.
I'm pretty sure every movie, like, unless we get emails saying, "Wow, I really liked your time loop movie." Yeah. Like, I think every movie after this should be just absurd jokes, because it'll be shorter and funnier. Anyway.
Yes.
All right.
Two things that we need this podcast to be.
Yes. All right. Let's just say the plane explodes and he gets the reactor.
Yep.
I guess we could plausibly think of something that's a little bit more plausible, but we don't have time for that right now.
We need to move along. If you can think of something better than that,
exactly,
please email us at alexandalex@joelthepodcast@gmail.com. I'd be shocked if anybody...
Subject line, I am a dumbass.
Obviously. But to be honest with you, I'd be shocked if somebody can come up with something better than that. Because if they do come up with something better than that, that means that they've spent a lot of time thinking about our podcast, which I don't think anybody does.
Yep, or like any non-zero amount of time thinking of our podcast. So
right.
All right. So
you have to be the most dedicated people to this podcast that there are. So if
or if it was just really obvious to you, put the subject line, "You guys are dumbasses."
I'd be almost as happy to receive an email with that subject line, honestly.
Yes. All right.
Whether or not they had heard this episode and were doing it because of this, like maybe just they've listened to one of the other episodes and they're like, man, these guys.
It would be so great if somebody independently of listening to this sent us an email with the subject line, "You guys are dumbasses." All right.
I need to quickly interject.
Okay.
I really hope this doesn't derail our whole train of thought, because I think we just made a good breakthrough there. I have two things to tell you regarding emails. One of them is that we received another email.
Oh my goodness! How is this not leading off the podcast?
Well, I mean, it's because there's less about it to discuss than there was with
say what the email.
The email is from cephalopodmaster@protonmail.com.
Okay.
I assume you know who that is.
Yes, I do.
The email is, the subject line of the email is, "Hi, here is an email." The body of the email is, "You asked me to email you, so here it is."
All right.
I also found out that this was sent to us because we had asked Maelstrom 1997 to email us in one of our episodes.
Well, Maelstrom, we wanted to find out who it was, right?
Right.
Is this Maelstrom?
Yes.
Okay.
It's all come together now.
Yeah, no offense to this person, but I'm a little bit disappointed that it's not just a random person. But
it's funny because when he messaged me to it was a different topic, but then this came up. He told me that he was Maelstrom, and I had typed out that exact thing. Like, I was gonna say, like, honestly, I'm a little disappointed it wasn't just somebody random. But then I was like, yeah, I'm not gonna say
that'd be a little
finish the message.
Yeah.
But then you said it, and then I admitted I was gonna say it.
So Maelstrom/cephalopodmaster, thank you for emailing us.
We do appreciate it.
We do appreciate you listening to our podcast.
Yes.
And please, next time you email us, please use the subject line, "I'm a dumbass." And
we all learn from our mistakes. So.
Maybe put some thoughts or suggestions into the email, because we are always open to feedback.
Correct. Yep.
All right. So he acquires. So we've explained now how. Okay, I think we're actually pretty close.
Yeah.
Now explained how what he does over those 40 years. So, okay, as a quick interjection to kind of explain where my thought process is for the rest of the movie.
All right.
I don't know if you remember, but back when we started this, I mentioned there's a Doctor Who episode with a similar idea where he is in a time loop. So he comes into this like prison basically, and through a series of events, he eventually is about to die, and just before he's gonna die, he re-uploads his mind. Actually, the thing that's what I said before. He doesn't actually re-upload his mind. He just uses his body as energy to create another copy of himself with his memories as it was when he entered the time loop.
Okay.
So, and then over the course of 2 billion years, he successfully breaks out of it.
Right.
But so I rewatched that episode earlier this week because I remember it being a pretty good episode. And basically, after you go through the first time loop, you don't really need to show much of any of the others. Like the second one, you show a little bit, and then after that, it's just like quick snippets from each loop.
Right.
Now the thing is, in that example, every single loop of him going through it was exactly the same, except for at the very end of the loop, he's like punching through this wall. So each iteration, he gets a little further into the wall.
Right.
So it's a little bit longer. But other than that, the entire thing's the same. For us, that's not the case. We want Joel to be like trying different things.
Right.
So I think we need to show a little bit more. But the bottom line is, once we show the first loop, we only have to show interesting things from the rest of it.
Yes.
So what interesting things do we want to show?
So I think in each case, we need a clip of him, because I think the most important thing we want to see through all the attempts is that his goal is to try different things each time, and he has to keep track for himself what he's tried.
Right.
So we need this loop of him like finding the list, looking through the list. He's got to think for a minute to come up with some new idea. I mean, think for a while to come up with some new ideas. He got plenty of time. But like at the beginning, I think what's really gonna drive home the like loop that it's just been going on over and over. I think the beginning clip, like once he realizes it was him and figures out that he's been trying this over and over, he needs to like cross out on the list what he had just tried. And then as the number of loops increases, like the amount of detail we put into like what those attempts are just goes down a lot, and you just at the end see like right before he has this breakthrough of like, I need to just try and like, or like I just need to give up, you know, and at which point he starts to become more successful. There's just need to be like 3 or 4 clips in a row of like cross out, like nothing's working.
Okay.
And then
right. Yeah, I like that.
To him, and he's just like, you know, laying down. He's like, I don't know what else to try. There's no more options.
Right. So what you've outlined is basically the first half of the attempts.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that's a good illustration. And maybe just showing a few different interactions of him with young Joel, with the different things he attempts, and then different, you know, clips. Like in the first time, we showed different things that he did to keep himself occupied during the 40 years. So we just show some of those throughout.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I agree. So those get shorter and shorter until we hit the breaking point. He's crossed out his last idea. He's like, I don't know what else to do. And so he writes himself a note like, just try whatever you can. I have no other ideas. So he wakes up with that, and he goes through his log and he sees all the different things he's tried, and he's like, wow, I really have nothing left to try. And you can see when young Joel comes that time, he's just like, what is this? It's a time machine.
Yeah.
Who are you? I'm you from the future. Like, he's just like,
he's like, no, you're not. There's no way. And then he just pulled out the baseball.
Right. And he's like,
very, like, treated, you know.
And then you just cut to the guy hitting the button. Cut to the next attempt. And you see him just laying there. The guy's like, who are you? And he's like, let me ask you something. And they have like at that point they have like a little bit of a more heart to heart, like real conversation. He doesn't reveal that he's his future self. Actually, you know what? Let's just cut out the previous time where he said he reveals it. Because he's really should just be depressed at this point.
Yeah.
Like actually depressed.
Yeah.
So, right. So they have a little bit of a real conversation. They talk about like he gets young Joel eventually to start talking about how he misses his family, and you can see him like not saying like, oh, I had the exact same situation, but he says something like, oh, I know how you feel, or something like that. And you see kind of like a genuine connection, and then, but he doesn't pursue it. He's just like, anyway, this is a time machine, so do what you gotta do. Nah, it doesn't make sense. I feel like the thing is, once he makes that emotional connection, we need some way for him to for that not just to be it.
Well, I mean, that's what success is, right? Like, once he succeeds, he makes the connection. Young Joel is like, I shouldn't.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, chase this, try and fix the past. I've got to move on. And
you're right. Well, or we're almost there. Okay, so I'm thinking that there's the first time he makes the emotional connection is not the time where it works. Yeah. So there's many times where he makes connection and starts realizing that that's what he needs to do, and then starts not removing his logs and memories. So the question is, what does he do to fuck it up during this time? Like, I need some not comical way. Like, it's easy to just say, he goes, yeah, I know how you feel. Anyway, this is a time machine. You can use it to go back and save your family. Go ahead and press that button to get rid of me and use it, which is a stupid way of doing it. Right, we need an actual way of him doing that, or of young Joel.
So is this okay? Let me make sure we're on the same page here. During this attempt where they've made a connection, young Joel finds out that there's a time machine, and he thinks he could go back and save his family, but he has to choose not to do that. Is that what we're aiming for here?
No, he has to choose to do that. Like, okay, so in the end, right?
Yeah.
What we could very easily do here is they make a connection, and we show over time them like becoming friends and, you know, emotionally maturing.
Okay.
But we don't want to, and then young Joel eventually leaves. But we actually want to reboot them several more times so that old Joel can destroy his logs, stop giving himself his memories back, go through that whole progression. Do you see what I'm saying here?
Yes, but I think I disagree with one thing, sort of. Maybe you didn't intend it this way, but
okay, go ahead.
Young Joel has to be the same every time, right? Like, he doesn't have any reason to change from the initial encounter.
Right.
Did you just mean that old Joel can more effectively?
Right, exactly. Like,
oh, okay.
Like in the beginning, he doesn't, like, they have some kind of emotional connection, but
yeah,
old Joel doesn't realize that that's the key to everything.
Gotcha.
And he doesn't turn into anything, is what I'm saying. And then after that happens a couple times, after that happens a couple times, he realizes, oh, hey, this is how I get him to leave. I have to emotionally mature him to the point where he doesn't want to go back in time and save his family.
Right.
So, but in order for that to happen several times, young Joel still has to use the time machine each time.
Right. We still need the connection to be made, but it wasn't enough.
Right. I don't know. Right. I'm saying I don't know quite how to get from he makes the connection to young Joel, then uses the time machine still.
Right. Okay, so let's see. It can be. See, old Joel really shouldn't be conflicted in any way. He should know, like, this isn't going to work. You really need to go away. So it needs to be something with young Joel not quite progressing enough to be able to get over the urge to use the time machine.
Right. What if the first time it's just like a slip of the tongue? Like, he's having an emotional moment with him. He's like, you really just need to move on from your family, like, and not try and go back in time to save them. Obviously, that's like a really bad, poorly written way of doing it. But he somehow accidentally reveals that it's a time machine.
Yeah.
And which causes young Joel to be like, wait, this is a time machine? How do I use it? And then we get the whole sequence with that again. But, like, that's one time.
Yeah.
So the next time...
I feel like it could really almost be that. He's like, listen, I understand how you feel. And he thinks he's, like, making a really genuine connection here. He's like, but you need to go on. You can't go back to save them. Or you shouldn't go back to save them. Because if he says you can't, then young Joel's just like, of course not. Right. He's like, shouldn't go back to save them. It's like, what do you mean?
But so then at that point, how does Joel not just fix that the next time?
Yeah, I mean, maybe he doesn't. Maybe we need to speed this bit up a little bit.
What do you mean?
Like, he realizes. So they do make a connection, but then it's still revealed that it's a time machine and it's too tempting for young Joel, and young Joel uses the time machine, becomes old Joel, and only with that hindsight realizes, like, oh man,
right,
that connection was like so close to working.
Yep. So you see a log of him being like, I have this list of all the stuff that didn't work, but I almost left this time.
Yeah.
What did I do? And so he said that, yeah. So, it happens. He goes back and it's some other way, but he accidentally lets young Joel know what's going on. And because what I'm going for here in the end is he has to be like, I can't be doing this with ulterior motives, right? He has to be like...
He has to really forget and not...
Right, I have to really forget about that this is my past self. I'm trying to save myself from a time loop.
Yeah.
So we would show a series of attempts where he keeps accidentally letting the information loose. I feel like that's a little bit implausible, though. I mean,
so I don't think it happens like I don't think he's like slipping up so much as like because he knows what he shouldn't be doing, that he's acting a little bit awkward around that sort of topic,
Right. Yeah. So maybe what's happening is instead of like trying to convince him to emotionally move on, or he's not genuinely trying to convince him to emotionally move on. He's just trying to get him to leave while using kind of like manipulating his emotions.
Yeah.
And then, okay, yes. We can show a couple iterations of that. Then he's like, all right, so I can't be doing this with my ulterior motives. He destroys his log. He just writes on the note like, you need to help this guy, move on from his family or whatever.
Yeah.
And that time I guess, works. Okay, at this point, we're almost there. We need to figure out what the ending of the movie is.
Yep.
What's the ending? So
Okay.
obviously, young Joel leaves.
Young Joel leaves. We have to see him getting better somehow. I think he should have, so like during the I can't think about that and talk at the same time. All right. During the like time when he's before he's so like before the time loop business starts where he's like mourning and like going through counseling, getting like kind of better, you know?
Right.
There needs to be like some like little thing that he gets hung up on or does or whatever,
Right.
so that we can show him at the end finally like overcoming that.
Yes, that's a good point.
And that's how we know that he's like mentally, he's
Right. Maybe
gone or whatever you want to
this is
say.
not what it is, but it's going to be something like he keeps setting his table for 3 people.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
That's
something like that. That's like,
right.
it's not like offensive to their memories when he stops doing it. Like he doesn't like throw the baseball away or something,
Right.
like but like yeah, he's like there's something that he does to where you can see like I accept that they're gone and I'm going to keep going to like
Right.
I'll remember them, but they're not like the only focus of like I'm not just going to be depressed about it forever.
Right. This is not great, but what if you see him like calling his wife's voicemail to hear her voice and he like talks to her
Yeah.
and the ending is you see him like deleting her contact from his phone.
Mm, I don't know about that. Like I'm just thinking like if I was in that situation, I don't think it would be like great like a I don't know that would feel like a step forward to be like nope, you're gone. I'm not going to look at you in my phone anymore or whatever. I'm thinking more something like like the setting I think the setting the table example was more along the lines of what I'm
Okay.
thinking of.
What if he hasn't been able to go into his son's bedroom yet? He's just kept the door closed.
That's good. I
And he
like that a
finally,
lot.
in the end, goes into his son's room.
Goes into his room and like sits on the bed and he's like looking around, everything's still
Right.
set up, and then he like puts the baseball on his
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
shelf.
that's good. And then he walks out, and that's the end.
Yeah. Cool.
All right,
All right.
so we don't even show old Joel like at all after young Joel leaves. Is
I was
that
just about to ask that. I think he needs some,
closure?
yeah, because he's just in his story, like his version of Joel, he still failed at moving on. So
Right.
how does
Well, he
how
didn't
does he have
fail.
a satisfying ending?
See, the thing is, he didn't fail at moving on. What happened is he failed at moving on when he was younger.
Right. That's what
But
I mean.
every right. So the thing is every single time old Joel has to have moved on
Oh
with his
yeah.
family by the time he goes back in time.
Otherwise, he wouldn't be trying to convince.
Right. He would be trying to tell his past self, here's what I tried, maybe you can try something else.
Right. Okay. No, you're okay. You're right. So
So by the time at this point in time, not only has he moved on, but he actually doesn't even know that he just helped his past self because he didn't keep his memories. So he we're so fucking close. He
So from his point of view, he just helped out this guy and he feels good and he doesn't know that his purpose was to save himself, which he just successfully did. So he's like succeeded in what he's been trying to do all along, but he doesn't know that. But he's not like that's not a problem for him,
Right.
Like
So, all right. So here's what I'm thinking. He still can use the time machine
yeah.
because he still has the energy source.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking he
Here, maybe this will help. I think we should get rid of the time machine in this timeline too.
what? Didn't we decide that the time machine is always there?
For the purposes of the loop. But okay, maybe not. I'm just thinking like wouldn't it be really easy for it to not like for a different problem to arise then because we just left this time machine there? Like shouldn't old Joel like
Okay. The ending is almost this. Instead of young Joel just going back, going into his son's room, putting the ball in the dresser, whatever, and that being it, you see young Joel. You see basically a montage of him, like. Okay, here's what I want.
Okay.
Old Joel, after he convinces young Joel to go away, he goes back to the future. Except he goes far enough into the future that when he comes out, there's a baseball field there. And young Joel, who's now also old Joel, is coaching kids in baseball. But the problem is, there's two problems. One is, how do we show young Joel going through all of that? I guess we could show the young Joel starting the beginnings of that. Like you see him, like see like a coach, like Coaches Wanted or something like that.
Yeah.
Like taking a flyer or something.
I think that's all we need.
But the other problem is that they just built a baseball field with this in the clearing with this time machine without knowing anything about it. Like that doesn't make sense.
Right. Maybe it's not in the clearing, it's just like within sight of the clearing.
Yeah, okay, so you see he goes back to the future. He like walks up to like a hill so he can overlook but now there's a baseball field there. Before there was no field there.
Right.
And they go to the baseball field. You see it says like his wife's name, Memorial Park.
Yeah, it's kind of implied that he started up that field.
Right, and you see him there. It's old Joel now, clapping like the kid's like, "Great job, Danny," or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you see go back to the other old Joel smiling, cut to black, the end.
That's good.
All right, it only took us 4 hours, but we did it.
This was much more complex than the other movies we've tried to do.
Yes, but I also think it was better than all of the other movies that we did. Well, better. I mean, it's a better movie than
it's like a higher quality storytelling.
Yes.
Not that the others weren't also good.
I hesitate to say that any movie was better than Sherlock Holmes XXX.
The greatest product anybody has made ever. Oh man. I wish I could listen to that again.
Me too.
It's one of the great tragedies of Joel the podcast.
It's the only great tragedy of Joel the podcast, other than the podcast itself.
Ouch.
It's a bit harsh. Joel the podcast isn't a tragedy. It's just
it's just a mild disappointment, really.
Yes. Yeah, actually, that's an excellent description.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's the end of our podcast today. thank you for listening if you stuck with us on this one.
Send us your thoughts on this epic conclusion.
Yep, I promise we'll try to be funnier next week.
Right.
So if you don't like it when we're not funny, I guess you probably wouldn't have listened to this thing in its entirety, but
right.
All right, cool. If you liked the movie, email us, alexandalex@joelthepodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what bad parts were about it. Let us know if you didn't like it. Please just, email us with your thoughts. We always like that. Yeah, I feel like we need to start saying email us with your thoughts, because otherwise we're just going to get emails from people that are just like, this is an email.
Here you go. You asked me to email you. Here's an email.
We really want you to email something to us, not just...
Right.
So please email us your thoughts, good or bad. I already said the email. So thanks for listening. I'm Alex.
I'm Alex.
And this has been Joel.